Ozzy Osbourne is back with a brand new studio album, Patient Number 9.
Hello there.
How are you?
Fine.
So let's take a look at what is inside the Prince of Darkness's 13th studio record, and then hopefully answer the question whether today, in 2022, when Ozzy Osbourne is 73, new music by him is even relevant at all. Here you go. Very quick before we start, as always, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our channel and community is of course to start a conversation. But alright, let's do it. The album opens with the title track featuring the legendary guitarist Jeff Beck, and which of course was released as the first single to Patient Number 9. And since it's been a couple of months since the song has been out, hearing the familiar tunes right at the beginning of this record is like meeting a good friend, which by itself is a great move designed to help you immerse into the overall atmosphere of Patient Number 9 much quicker. The song itself is of course a direct follow-up to Ozzy's previous studio effort, Ordinary Man. And this of course is no coincidence given the fact that the production team on this one is basically exactly the same. Yet at the same time, the opening riff also gives out a slight No More Tears era vibe, evoking a certain nostalgia for Ozzy's back catalog, which this album will have plenty of, both in terms of the personalities invited to participate on Patient Number 9 and music. In addition, the track's lyrics, especially in the lines like "hiding the pills inside your mouth, swallow them down, then spit them out," deal with a topic familiar to any old-school Ozzy Osbourne fan. I mean, it almost feels like a madman is writing those words in a diary, or something like that.
Hiding the pills inside your mouth, swallow them down and spit them out.
Yet the highlight of this track is of course an exquisite job done by the legendary guitarist Jeff Beck, and especially in the closing solo, who, by the way, in case you didn't know, is 16 times Grammy nominee and 8 times Grammy winner, which makes him one of the most renowned guitarists in the history of music, and second most renowned guitarist on this record, after Eric Clapton. By the way, just a couple of hours ago, Ozzy Osbourne hit the stage once again and performed Patient Number 9 live for the very first time at a halftime show for the first game of the NFL season, followed by the Ozzy Osbourne classic Crazy Train together with Zakk Wylde. And here I just wanted to point out how unexpectedly well did the new song fit together with the one written 42 years ago. And also to point out that the second live appearance in a month by Ozzy Osbourne just gives us a tiny little bit of hope that in the end of the day, Ozzy might still go on his No More tours, for which I personally have tickets for like 3 years already. On the following track, Immortal, Ozzy Osbourne joins forces with Pearl Jam's guitarist McReady. And here's the thing, the opening riff to Immortal actually calmed me and finally allowed me to breathe a little. Since this hard rock-like tune, despite not really being heavy, is by itself less commercially sounding than the entire previous record, and despite being very simple and extremely catchy, is not exactly the thing which a person who is not immediately immersed into the world of heavy metal would like to hear on the radio, for which I am very thankful. In addition, features a very 90s Ozzy Osbourne chorus which will get stuck in your head for days to come, in which Ozzy of course talks about how he will never ever die, which I'm not 100% sure is possible, yet seeing how he climbed up stage when a couple of years ago that seemed absolutely impossible, who knows. The third track on Patient Number 9 marks the return of one of the most beloved guitarists by all Ozzy Osbourne fans, the Christian Viking from New Jersey, Zakk Wylde. Ironically enough though, Parasite is the most upbeat and modern sounding tune on this record, and while the song's theme itself is not exactly what I would expect from an Ozzy-Zakk collaboration, one thing still holds true. Even without reading any liner notes, everyone should be able to unmistakably say who plays the guitar on this song. No Escape From Now is the track which I was both anticipating and dreading to hear the most, simply because of the fact that I was too afraid to be disappointed by something that Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne do together. Yet the slow and enchanting acoustic intro to No Escape From Now made me cautiously optimistic about this track.
Too much confusion when living the day.
And as the song's theme unfolds, you understand that No Escape From Now is in fact a modern sounding ode to Tony's and Ozzy's joint legacy, with nods to old Black Sabbath, yet with an undeniably 21st century-like sound. No Escape From Now is glorious in its dark and doomy sound, and although it does in fact sound like something Tony and Ozzy would write in the 21st century, those effects reminiscent of the older days, including the nods to Planet Caravan, actually make this song exactly what I was looking for in a modern collaboration by the two heavy metal legends. In addition, in all of its dark glory, No Escape From Now also opens the gates to what, according to Ozzy Osbourne, is the most scandalous song on this record. According to Ozzy Osbourne, Eric Clapton, who is also featured on this track and who is a Christian, asked Ozzy to change the phrase on one of those days I don't believe in Jesus, which appears in the chorus of this track. And the thing is, Ozzy and his management actually seriously considered doing that and even tried out a couple of different versions, including on one of those days I don't believe in Christmas, which in my personal opinion is a very sad thing they didn't go through with, cause then it would constantly remind me of this episode.
So if you really love Christmas, come on, let it snow. This is shit, isn't it?
Yep. Solid gold shit, Maestro.
Yet, after playing around with the phrase, they realized that none of it actually makes sense and decided to leave it as it is. And this, according to Ozzy Osbourne, might be one of the most controversial things about this album. Which, here's the thing. I, as a Christian, completely disagree. Since A, it is not offensive at all, and B, I think that by now pretty much everyone understands that these songs are meant to be storytelling pieces. Don't they? Oh, and on that note, Eric Clapton's blues rock solo is freaking amazing as always. And thus ends the first half of the album, which I'm still bound to be enjoying only digitally because my order, which has been placed on the first day of a pre-order, hasn't even been shipped yet.
Why, God, why?
And thus it would be a good time to draw the first conclusions about patient number 9. So let's do it.
Exactly.
On one hand, patient number 9 is clearly a follow-up to Ozzy Osbourne's previous studio record and is very cohesive to the overall line started by Andrew Wood on Ordinary Man. And yet at the same time, this album is nothing like Ordinary Man. For even though its sound and production is still very, very polished, its overall feel and the atmosphere is significantly less commercial than its predecessors. And maybe at least partially because on this record, Ozzy Osbourne is not really trying to flirt with the significantly younger audience, since it does not feature any collaborations with Post Malone or Travis Scott, and is packed with appearances by old school dudes, whom, let's be honest, we all love and we are very thankful for.
Yes, that's true.
And speaking about those appearances, it is absolutely striking how even from the first half of this record, it is already evident how much each of those had on the song structure and development process, which analyzing several interviews done by the Ozzy Osbourne management, makes me believe that even though Ozzy Osbourne is written as the sole writer and composer for most of those songs, I actually think that Tony, Zakk, Eric, and other guests actually had quite a lot of input on how the song they appear on should sound.
Somebody stop me!
And B, despite each track on this record so far being extremely different from the previous one, they all are still tied by the same theme, both lyrically and musically, making it a very cohesive record which you can easily listen in one sit through without having to stop and digest each of the tracks separately.
Simple, beautiful, classic.
Oh, and by the way, just in case, both of the points I just mentioned is a definite plus to the karma of patient number 9. And since we are having a little break here, I just wanted to remind you to comment what you personally think about patient number 9 and which is your personal favorite track from this record. Do it.
Write that down, write that down!
But that's it, the break is over. Let's continue. The second part of the album opens with 3 tracks featuring Zakk Wylde on guitar, starting with Dark and Enchanted Mr. Darkness. Overall, this track is possibly the closest we get on this album to what I personally expected from Zakk Wylde and Ozzy Osbourne's collaboration, featuring yet another mid-tempo piece similar to the one which was released as one of the singles, and which happens to be the next track on the record, Nothing Feels Right. Yet at the same time, Mr. Darkness does correspond to its title and is significantly darker and gloomier than its follow-up. Although it does, of course, feature a humorous ending in a very classic Ozzy Osbourne style.
You don't even know my name, you asshole!
Nothing Feels Right, which was the third and the final single to this record, Zakk Wylde and Ozzy Osbourne of course show a much more lyrical side of their songwriting, once again diving deeper into the themes of sanity and mental health.
Don't regret me, even when I do.
Overall, even though patient number 9 is not really a concept album, concepts of insanity and mental health, which make you juggle on a point of life and death, are in fact the main lyrical themes running throughout this record.
I've been calling out for someone, mouth around the gun.
Except for one about which we'll talk in just a moment. Yet overall on this album, Ozzy Osbourne, who is 73 years old now and who's been through so much lately, clearly reflects not only on his career but also on his life overall and on the place he, who, let's be honest here, is not getting any younger, will hold in the heavy metal world in the future. And after seeing him going up on stage twice in the last couple of weeks and hearing Ozzy talk about how he dreams about doing a full-length concert and possibly a tour, just makes me personally extremely appreciative of the fact that even despite a lot of polishing and voice-enhancing technologies, we still get to hear a new music by the legendary Prince of Darkness. And also appreciative of the fact that by the end of the Zakk Wylde trilogy on the second part of the album, the legendary guitarist finally explodes in a masterful and very Zakk Wylde-like solo. For the final collaborative track on this record, Ozzy Osbourne once again invites the riff master himself, the legendary and one and only Tony Iommi. And the two dudes who are 70-plus-year-old each decided to write a song which will, in one capacity or another, be applicable to the majority of the population on this planet. Masturbation. Oh, and by the way, in case you're thinking that in reality this song is only figuratively about masturbation, and in fact it actually is about mental problems once again, or about being self-critical, no. Seriously, it's literally about touching yourself. And since this track was released a couple of weeks ago and we've already have spoken about it, I do not actually intend to go into the details of Degradation rules, except for once again pointing out how amazing it is that today in 2022 we still get to hear new music by the legendary Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne. Dead and Gone is possibly the closest we get to a filler on patient number 9. And And here's the thing, the song is actually not bad at all, yet in my personal opinion it does not bring anything new to Patient Number 9, and despite having this very old school 80s soft rock like vibe, is in fact the only track on this record which I personally skipped when writing this review. A statement which I cannot really say about the follow-up God Only Knows.
Face down on the pavement like a wounded animal.
Final full-length track on Patient Number 9 is a classic example of a stadium rock ballad, which, let's be honest here, will be a great sing-along on any future Ozzy Osbourne shows, if they will of course happen.
God only knows what's going on. My life has become the saddest song.
Lyrically, the Prince of Darkness once again reflects on his mortality and his place in the world of music now that he's in his 70s, especially with such lines as "it's better to burn in hell than fade away," which is of course a clear nod to the famous Neil Young lyric, which also has made it to Kurt Cobain's final note. Yet even though God Only Knows is of course the last full-length track on Patient Number 9, the album closer is in fact a 2-minute long Dark Side Blues. And here's the thing, I personally absolutely loved that Ozzy Osbourne and the team decided to close this album with Dark Side Blues and not with God Only Knows. Because A, closing on a very touchy song would of course hit on the fans' nostalgia and would, given everything we know about Ozzy Osbourne, feel like a goodbye note of some sort. Yet this album is not about goodbye, and quite the opposite. It is about celebration of Ozzy Osbourne's career, and is actually designed in a way to make you, an Ozzy Osbourne fan, to be optimistic and excited for the new chapter by Prince of Darkness. And B, let's be honest here, we all love blues, and thus ending an album with such peace would be a perfect outro for the record. So let's sum up. Should you listen to Patient Number 9 by Ozzy Osbourne? Definitely yes. Is it the most innovative thing which Ozzy Osbourne has ever done in his career, which will bend the laws of nature and change heavy metal as we know it? Possibly not. But here's the thing. It is actually not supposed to. And even more, I actually refuse to give in to pressure and overly criticize this album by nitpicking on every little thing, which in my opinion Ozzy Osbourne and the team have done wrong, while forgetting to mention all the good things on, just to be able to ride the wave of hype on YouTube. Because at this point I'm just simply very happy that today, in 2022, I'm able to enjoy a new material by one of the grandfathers of heavy metal, on which Ozzy Osbourne neither really tries to appeal to a significantly younger audience, nor is actually stuck in the 1980s, and instead is moving forward by releasing a very Ozzy Osbourne-like sounding album, yet with a very modern feel. And what do you guys personally think? Please let me know in the comments. Oh, and by the way, be like Ozzy Osbourne, and don't forget that the war in Ukraine is still going on, so please continue supporting my country in any way you possibly can. Thank you so much for watching, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!